Hey there, and welcome back to Bourbon Battles. My name's Joe. I got to thinking the other day, I want to do this episode. I've been thinking about it in my head for a very long time. And, you look around here, you see all this whiskey, and that's fun. It's fun to have all this stuff. But what's really cool about whiskey is getting into the folklore of it, going to the distilleries, visiting them, and learn the history about it. That's what we want to show you today, so stick with us. Okay, so you've all heard this folklore associated with bourbon, right? There's all kinds of stuff you can learn. Some of it's real, some of it's not. A lot of it's half truths, and that's what's kind of cool about all of it. But since I've been into this, into whiskey and drinking whiskey and checking it out, probably the coolest story I've heard is the story of Uncle Nearest brand. So, more importantly, the namesake of this brand. So, as I got to thinking about this, I did some research. I went online and watched a bunch of stuff, different things that people had to say on YouTube, Googled it, learned a lot about Uncle Nearest, right? And what he meant to the whiskey community as we know it today. So I'm going to join this bottle with another bottle, but as I go through it, and I went through it over and over and over again, I took a couple pages of notes of things that I could talk about. What I figured out very quickly is, hey, the people down at Uncle Nearest did it the best. So I'm going to cut to a video here in just a second. I implore you to watch this. If you've not seen it, it's 10 minutes of incredible whiskey history. So check this out.
This is a special home on a special piece of American land. Surprised it's still here. This isn't a set. We're in Tennessee, in the hills above Lynchburg. I want to tell you a story, true story. Over 160 years ago, the sight of steam and smoke curling into the sky just around that bend meant one thing to the people of Lincoln County. It meant the man they called Nearest Green was hard at work making the finest whiskey ever to come out of these hills. He took the same elements available to anyone else: earth, fire, water. He added generational skill, success, surely some failure. He put in everything he had. Most of all, he put in his heart. He created a spirit, an essence. What Nearest Green did here, with this limestone, that clear creek water, those sugar maple trees, he gave birth to Tennessee whiskey. The technique Nearest perfected of filtering his whiskey through charcoal made from sugar maple trees is still revered 2 centuries later as the Lincoln County process. His unique approach was most likely passed down to him from West Africa, where people historically filtered their water through charcoal to purify it. This single innovation in Nearest's hands would become the defining distinction between Tennessee whiskey and Kentucky bourbon. Friends and family called him Uncle Nearest, the first African-American master distiller on record, the founding father of Tennessee whiskey. His story went missing untold for quite some time. Why? It's complicated. But what's important is that the truth has finally found the light, as it always does. Nearest's given name was Nathan Green. He was thought to have been born in Maryland sometime around 1820. We don't know a lot about his early life, but we do know that in the mid-1800s, he began to work on a farm here in Tennessee. This farm. Nearest Green was a slave here, and later a free man. And this farm belonged to a man named Dan Call, a preacher. Well, Reverend Call wasn't only a preacher. He had a little side hustle. Yeah, a whiskey distillery. And Nearest Green was the one doing the distilling. The whiskey he made was unique in its smoothness. People said it was the best around. But this isn't just a story about a master craftsman and an innovator. It's a story of a friendship. Around the mid-1850s, a young boy came to work on Dan Call's farm. White boy. Wasn't a privileged kid. The youngest of 10 siblings, motherless by 4 months old. Small for his age, but he wanted to work. And he helped the preacher out with whatever he could. But the constant smell of wood smoke and the mules and wagons shuffling back and forth up that hollow caught his attention. He wanted to know what the deal was with all that. Finally, the preacher gave in. He took him to meet Nearest. This is Uncle Nearest, he told him. The best whiskey maker I know of. And he asked Nearest to teach his new young apprentice everything he knew about distilling. Nearest took the boy under his wing, taught him well. They became good friends. As the boy got older, he started selling this special whiskey all around these parts and other towns, even to soldiers fighting in the Civil War. He was a natural-born salesman and entrepreneur. The 13th Amendment was ratified on December 6th, 1865. And soon after, Nathan Nearest Green was a free man. That boy, a young man now, well, he purchased Dan Call's distillery and named it after himself. And of course, he asked his mentor and friend Nearest to be his first official master distiller. They kept making and selling great whiskey. And during this time, for a good many years to follow, Uncle Nearest's involvement was widely known. His family became one of the most prominent in the area, well respected for their talents and success. And as his business grew, the young man built a new, bigger distillery on another plot of Lynchburg land. Uncle Nearest decided to retire from the game, but his sons, Eli, George, and Louis, they continued to work for the distillery, as did his grandsons, Charlie and Ott. And that chore boy, who came to be a brilliant businessman, never let his friendship with and respect for Nearest Green and his family go unnoticed. Even after he became one of the most famous whiskey makers in all the world. His legal name was Jasper. Folks around here in Lynchburg still call him Uncle Jack. You know him as Jack Daniel. And now you know Nearest Green. This home, this bottle, this foundation honor that man, his legacy, and his future. 'Cause he lives on. Uncle Nearest didn't just make great whiskey. He made history. And now you know that too. And to all those men and women whose stories remain untold, may their truth find the light. A little taste of history.
Now, how cool is that? If that doesn't move you, then I don't know what does. And I thought, what a better time to show this story than Black History Month. So, what an amazing story. Look, this is one of my favorite whiskeys. I told you I was going to join it with another bottle. Jack Daniels is this is one of my favorite whiskeys in the world. Jack Daniels Single Barrel Proof. Without Uncle Nearest, that doesn't happen. So I went back and forth over and over and over again in my head whether or not I was going to review this whiskey or just tell the story or both or how I wanted to do it. So this is the Uncle Nearest 1884. It's their, I guess we'll say, entry level bottle, right? They have a high proof. This is their lower proof. I think that this is a very appealing bottle at 93 proof. It's not expensive. So, and as I thought through this, right, I'm going to tell you right now, I do like it. So you can see how far I've gotten down to it. I've had it in bars before. I just purchased this bottle last week in anticipation of doing this video, right? So what I'll tell you is there are very few things you can put on your shelf, right, that have more of an impact to your guests than the ones that you can tell a story about, right? I always say, and I'll do an episode on this eventually, like allocated whiskeys that are worth paying extra for. And the number one whiskey I think that's worth paying extra for is Blanton's. Because if you learn the story about Blanton's and the first single barrel and all these things, it's a really cool story to tell as you serve it to people. And I can go around this room many times over and see different things I can tell stories of, right? And a lot of them, like Jack Daniels, for example, right? I love to tell the story about where he kicked the safe and broke his foot and all that stuff, right? Because I've seen the safe. I've been to Jack Daniels where, Uncle Nearest was a big part of that. And we did learn about Uncle Nearest on that tour. So those stories are amazing to tell. It's hard to tell that story if you don't have this on your shelf to accompany that story, right? Like I said, the stories are half of the folklore, right? Going to the distilleries and learning about how these places came to be. I just reviewed a whiskey. We won't get into what it was, right? But it was a whiskey that had been canceled during Prohibition, and it came back, and they're doing a good job, right? What it takes to come back from that. Very, very interesting. These guys are killing it down there. Mostly, if I understand everything right, mostly women running that. What a cool thing. I don't know how many bottles are in here that have a cooler story than this? And the answer is probably zero. So for what this costs, or get the cast strength or get one of their limited releases, it is an absolute must have. And if I ever do, and I will do, it's on my list to do here very soon. If I ever did a top 10 list of must have whiskeys that you have to have in your collection, if you can only have 10, Uncle Nearest, absolutely, by far, no questions asked, has got to be on that list because you just watched the video and now you know the story. And anybody that walks into your home bar, you can articulate that whole thing to while you enjoy a pour of this. And it is good. It is good whiskey. I'm going to leave it at that. So, hey, I can't wait to get down there. Hopefully, if somebody from Uncle Nearest sees this, let me know. I would love to come down and do an interview with you. I would make a special trip. You are probably about 6 hours from me, but I have a good friend in Nashville, Tennessee. Jack, if you're watching this, we've been talking about going down there for a very long time. So somebody from Uncle Nearest, get Jack and I down there to tour your facility. I'd love to hang out with you guys and learn a little more about your product, a little more about your story, and see it firsthand and talk to the people firsthand. Hey, this is Joe from Bourbon Battles, reminding you drinking whiskey is supposed to be fun. Do it with your friends, do it responsibly, tell the stories, but don't drink and drive. See you next time.
Drink, don't drive, do the watermelon crawl.